Good morning. Well, good morning and welcome to the April 7th service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Grand Traverse. My name's Dan Tholen. I'm a member of the Sunday Services Committee and coordinator for today's service. Welcome to all of you online, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you here. April's here. Sometimes it feels like February, and then like May, and then it's back to April again. The eclipse tomorrow, right? Is anybody traveling to go to totality? All right, well, good luck to you. We hope for visibility and not apocalyptic traffic. Okay. Nan and I experienced the full eclipse about 7 years ago in Idaho on top of a mountain, and it truly is a life-changing experience to see, so I recommend it. Are there any visitors with us here today in the sanctuary? Any returning guests? If you're comfortable, stand and introduce yourselves.
Ed Mendenhall.
Huh? Welcome. Welcome, Laurie. We have a social hour after the service. Please join us for coffee. If you do, please take a yellow mug and we'll try to introduce ourselves and greet you. For any of you here in the sanctuary, if you have any joys or concerns, anything you'd like to share with the congregation, we have a book over here. You can write down your joy of concern, write clearly, please, and we'll read that just a little later in the service. Please silence your devices as we prepare for the service today. Me too. So April also introduces a new topic to our Soul Matters program that we've been following this year. This month it's interdependence. And today's service on the pale blue dot is certainly in line with that, interdependence of each other and also the connection that we have that we'll talk about in a while. It's a topic that's close to me, I think, and probably to many of you here today, this idea of science interacting with religion, something I've been studying for recently, for quite a while, and mostly recently. We've all been enriched by the revelations from Stephen Hawking, Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and some scientists see these revelations as being evidence that we don't need God in order to understand creation or the origin of the species. We all agree something started it all, whether God or something else, with the Big Bang. Something had to start that. But after that, some scientists will be saying, Sagan and Hawking among them, saying that all we really need is gravity, and all the other forces, the other natural forces, the nuclear forces and electrical forces and whatnot. And that's all we need in order to explain creation. Other scientists argue from exactly the same data and say that there is direction, there is evidence of direction of some kind at certain key stages in the emergence of life. Evidence of intelligence in the design of some of the most complex systems in life. So this is an ongoing argument that I find rewarding to read. But in short, proven science is not disputed among rational scientists, whether they believe in God, whether God had an active hand in creation or not. We all still share the beauty and the awe at creation, which we'll be talking about. One other thing that scientists agree on, the theme of today's service, is that the planet is truly awesome. It would qualify as a miracle in some interpretations. And whether that's by good fortune or design, really, it doesn't matter. It's all we have, and so we have to take care of it, take care of each other, the interdependence. So let's get on with the service, starting with our centering music. Today it's called Sun, Moon, and Stars, composed by Jim Brickman and played by Julie Gowitz.
Good morning. I'm Keith Anderson. I've been a member of UUCGT since 2016, and despite what the order of service says, I am not Dan Tholen. A little bit of a change up. So, oh, there we go. In 1980, Voyager 1 had completed its primary science mission, exploring the planetary systems of Jupiter and Saturn, but was still functioning well enough to conduct some further science experiments. Carl Sagan, who was one of the lead scientists on the project, had suggested that Voyager point its camera back towards the inner solar system and take what he called a family portrait of Earth, Mars, and Venus. He recognized that this wouldn't really have much scientific value, but he thought that it would help give some perspective on our place in the universe. The higher-ups at NASA liked the idea, but they were kind of concerned that pointing that very sensitive camera back towards the sun could damage it irreparably. The debate went on so long that at the time the NASA administrator had to finally step in and say, "Take the picture." Instrument calibration further delayed things, and it wasn't until February 14th, 1990 that that picture was taken. By that point, Voyager had already passed the orbit of Pluto and was heading out of the solar system 25 times faster than a rifle bullet. The images were stored on board Voyager until March, when the Deep Space Network finally had some time to download the data. It took the data 5.5 hours to reach Earth at light speed. After image processing, here is that portrait. So it's a mosaic of 60 slides all stuck together. And you can see it says Earth and Venus. I can put this up at the end if people are interested. You can see all of the planets sort of in relation to each other, except Mars, Mercury, and Pluto. Mars and Mercury were too close to the sun, and Pluto is just too small to see. I'm going to zoom in on one of those images. Okay, do you see that orange band of light down the side? Okay, that's caused by sunlight refracting inside the camera. About halfway up that orange band is a single blue pixel. That's the Earth and the Moon from almost 4 million miles away.
It's our tradition in the Unitarian faith to light a chalice every day to guide us in our service. Ellie, if you can come up here and help us for a second. We've got some opening words. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness they called night. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Now, let's let the rhythm of the singing bowl remind us of the echoes of that first creation, which are still reverberating in the cosmos. It's still out there, pulsing slowly, a perfect B flat. And now rise as you're willing and able for our opening hymn, led by Anne Marie.
Actually, surprise, stay seated. And the VE is going to come forward for this one. We have a kind of a little treat for you today. In lieu of trying to muddle through a 20th century piece of music that really is not friendly to congregational singing, we thought that we would bring forward a piece from our living tradition that celebrates some of our heritage in this country. So I want to tell you a little bit about this piece. This is actually number 60 in our Singing the Living Traditions hymnal. It is a piece of music with words. The poem is by Langston Hughes. So, it was set to music by African-American composer George Walker, who is not as familiar to most of us in the music world, but is still deserving of celebration. He was the first African-American Pulitzer Prize-winning composer, and this is a great opportunity for us to celebrate his dedication and contributions to American music, and an opportunity for you to listen and instead of try to figure out how the melody goes, okay? So here we go. This is In Time of Silver Rain. The children's benediction. Go in joy, go in peace to meet the day. With open hearts embrace life's wonder. We will guide you, we will love you on your way.
one place where scientific observation disagrees with Scripture is on the divine intervention in routine daily activities. As far as I know, there's no good scientific evidence of that, other than miracles, of course, which are discussed in the Bible, but those don't comply with the laws of nature. We'd like to believe in miracles, but that doesn't keep the Wi-Fi running. We need your help. We've got a building and we've got staff. We need support. We have in our baskets two sides, one for community activities, one for support of the congregation. We have options for giving for those of you online. Please be generous. Thank you for your contributions. We have a meditation film, a video here that we're going to show now on this concept of all made of stardust.
We're all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically.
I think nature's imagination is so much greater than man's. He's never gonna let us relax, 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 relax.
We live in an in-between universe where things change all right, but according to patterns, rules, or as we call them, laws of nature.
I'm this guy standing on a planet. Really, I'm just a speck. I'm just a speck compared with a star. The planet is just another speck. To think about all of this, to think about the vast emptiness of space. Billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of specks.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Across the sea of space, the stars are other sun. We've traveled this way before, and there is much to be learned.
We're all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, to the rest of the universe atomically.
I find it elevating and exhilarating to discover that we live in a universe which permits the evolution of molecular machines as intricate and subtle as we.
I know that the molecules in my body are traceable to phenomena in the cosmos. That makes me want to grab people in the street and say, have you heard this?
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself.
There's this tremendous mass of waves all over in space, which is the light bouncing around the room, going from one thing to the other, and it's all really there, really, really there. But you gotta stop and think about it, about the complexity to really get the pleasure. It's all really there, really, really there. The inconceivable nature of nature. To think about all of this, to think about the vast emptiness of space. Billions and billions of stars, billions and billions of specks.
The beauty of a living thing is not the atoms that go into it, but the way those atoms are put together. The cosmos is also within us. We're made of star stuff. We are a way for the cosmos to know itself. Across the sea of space, the stars are other sun. We've traveled this way before, and there
is much to be learned.
This is the time we normally share any joys or concerns that have been offered up. There haven't been any today. We assume that we're holding these concerns in our hearts and their hopes in our hearts. I did light some candles here for the Day of Silence, which is Friday this week. It's really the Day of No Silence. The Day of No Silence is a nationally recognized student-led demonstration where LGBTQ+ students and allies all around the country and the world protest the harmful effects of harassment and discrimination of LGBTQ people in schools. On this day, students will go through the school day without speaking, ending the day with breaking the silence rallies to bring attention to ways their schools and communities can become more inclusive. So let's hold this day of silence in our hearts today and on Friday. Moment of meditation now.
Please join me in singing number 123, or is it 125, in the hymnal, Spirit of Life.
Lighting the chalice today, I opened with the first verse of the Bible on what happened on day one. I'll complete the suspense here by reading what happened on the sixth day. On the sixth day, God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Well, as I mentioned earlier, I've been studying this history of science and religion, which are sometimes seen by people as being in conflict, but actually they're not. Many of the earliest scientists, or philosophers as they were called, saw their inquiries into the secrets of creation as inquiries into the understanding the mind of God. They marveled at the revelation as evidence of God's intelligence and the beauty of their design. Indeed, the Hebrew God is thought to have encouraged scientific inquiry because the Hebrews claimed there was a single God and a single divine plan with people created in his image. This allowed scientists to go looking for the plan. Other religious faiths, primarily the animists and some others, believed in multiple gods, maybe of higher different ranks, somewhat capricious and perhaps battling with each other. And so the Hebrew notion of one God, one plan opened the idea that maybe it could be discovered. Galileo was very devout, but he proved that the earth orbited the sun, and he was in prison for that. But eventually the Catholic Church did embrace the reality of what we see in nature. Isaac Newton was deeply devout. He described the laws of gravity. He wrestled with wrestling with that in the concept of action at a distance, which was something we still don't understand very well. He also invented calculus and spectroscopy, and for my statistician, my heart, the binomial theorem. He claimed that all his discoveries came through prayer. Galileo noted, unsuccessfully I guess, that there were two truths. One truth was Scripture, and the other truth is nature, which reveals God's true plan. Scripture needed to be seen as apocryphal, not factual, and needed to be interpreted in full acceptance of the revealed truths. This is generally the approach that allowed scientific inquiry to advance in the Western countries, in the universities that were associated with the church, as well as in scientific societies that were independent of the church. It allowed acceptance of having the sun at the center of the solar system. It accepted the biologic causes of disease rather than God's decision. And eventually it accepted evolution as the origin of the species, which questioned the divinity of man. Strangely, there remains one glaring conflict that to me is unresolved, and that is the interpretation of Scripture regarding the spectrum of gender that we have in our society. The non-binary is evidence in every species of plant and animal where observations have been made. Every species of plant and animal that usually reproduce sexually. Clearly, it's a fundamental property of the miracle of life, the spectrum of genders. And it must have an evolutionary benefit, but somehow that hasn't been recognized. That's a story for a different service, but it remains one of, like I say, one of those conflicts that Scripture needs to come into accord with. I've read arguments of scientists who fully understand physics and biology, everything that Hawking, Sagan, and Neil deGrasse Tyson would say is evidence of the no God. But there are a good number of scientists who understand this science fully and still believe that creation had some intelligent aspects to it. Certain parts of the emergence of life required some kind of intervention, as well as some of the physical constants. So anyway, these are very interesting readings. This point where we need intervention somehow, and some intelligent intervention is sometimes called the God of the gaps, where the physicists would say, well, the creationists, they reach a point where we just have to say, well, God did come in here. Anyway, it's a unresolved conflict, not resolved in my mind. I'm sure that many of you have also wrestled with some of these ideas and find the readings and the pursuit worthwhile right there. In a nutshell, the observations that are considered to be evidence of an intelligent creator among the scientists is, first of all, the Big Bang. Something had to light the fuse, right? And they also claim that the laws of nature, gravity, the physical constants, the nuclear forces, are precisely coordinated, and that requires intelligence or is evidence of intelligence. And finally, DNA. The DNA can be thought of very much like a digital code, very complicated code that leads to a very complicated outcome. Something we know from computers is clear sign of intelligence. Code like that doesn't occur by chance, as maintained by the scientists, who are also theologians. So, today's teachings on the cosmos are from avowed atheists who believe that the physical forces are sufficient to explain our existence, even though these scientists are clearly awed by the understanding that all matter was cooked in the stars and was able to come together and eventually contemplate itself. I respect this view because it leads to the same place as if you believe in divine guidance. It leads to awe, of course, and we hope a sense of interdependence.
So there's the pale blue dot. Look again at that picture while I read you something. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from somewhere else to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. Dr. Carl Sagan first spoke those words during a lecture at Cornell University in 1990, then later included them in his book, The Pale Blue Dot. Every time I see or hear those words, I get a little choked up. I even hear them in Dr. Sagan's voice in my head. We are tiny specks crawling on the surface of a dot in the big black. It's humbling. In case you hadn't figured it out, today I'm going to be talking about my take on the seventh principle, the respect for the interdependent web of all existence. When I first heard that phrase, I remembered those worksheets we did in earth science in 6th grade. Remember those things? You have foxes and cougars and rabbits and mice and grass and sunlight. You know, the rabbits and mice would eat the grass that grows in the sun, and the foxes and the cougars would eat the mice and the rabbits, and eventually they died and their bodies would feed the grass. And pretty basic stuff. But it got the concepts across. That was mostly what I thought about until I heard Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson's sermon on science. You saw a little clip of it in the video here. I won't repeat the whole thing, but I do recommend you go to YouTube and look it up. It's fascinating. The thing that struck me was that Dr. Tyson said something I had felt but hadn't really been able to articulate up until I heard him say it. Dr. Tyson says that he feels what he imagines must be the same awe and reverence when he thinks about the universe and its processes that others feel when they contemplate the divine nature of God. The interdependent web of existence encompasses just that, all existence. Not just the planet or the solar system or even the universe, but also all that has been and all that will be. You see, the atoms that are in our bodies came from the creative forces of the universe.
It's taking a second. Hold on. Just leave it. I'll get it. I have your notes.
It's true. The atoms that we are made of came from out there. We think hydrogen atoms first formed about 400,000 years after the Big Bang. Before that time, the universe was just too hot for the subatomic particles, you know, the quarks and electrons and protons, etc. They were just moving too fast to stick together. After the atoms formed, there was a long period of what the scientists call the Dark Ages, before the first stars formed, about 400 million years later. That being said, the Webb telescope has recently imaged what appears to be a galaxy that formed only 300 million years after the creation of, after the Big Bang. So maybe that timeline needs a little more work. Anyway, here's where things get interesting, because stars burn because of nuclear fusion. So gravity starts pulling matter together. You get random fluctuations in the gravity, and hydrogen starts clumping together. And those clumps have more gravity, so they pull in more hydrogen. And eventually you get enough matter mashed together that the weight of all of that matter creates pressure high enough to overcome the forces in the electrons, and they start fusing together, and that releases energy. So a new star ignites. So what happens is, up at the top there, you've got a couple of hydrogen atoms, and they get mashed together, and they make a helium atom, and they release a little bit of energy and a neutron. And it keeps going, and eventually you start producing helium, and then when the hydrogen gets used up, you start fusing the helium together, and that creates lithium, and I'm not going to go all the way through the periodic table here, but the important thing is that each time you go a little higher up the chain, a little less energy gets released. So you get all of these different elements stacking up in the star, and they sort of layer themselves out by weight, so you get this thing that looks like a giant gobstopper. What's interesting is by the time you get to iron, it starts taking more energy to fuse than is released in the reaction. And so the reaction sort of just fizzles out. Well, not really fizzles. When a star runs out of energy in fusible atoms, the heat and the pressure won't sustain itself, and the star collapses in on itself. So this part happens really quickly. So it might take a star millions or even billions of years to work its way up to fusing to carbon, but once it gets to carbon, it uses up the rest of its fuel in about 1,000 years, which is a blink of an eye in a stellar lifespan. So the pressure at the iron core, which is right down there at the middle, gets so great that the electrons can actually get pushed into the protons, and they join together and make neutrons and shrink in size. So in under a second, that ball of white hot iron in the middle there, which is about the size of the Earth, shrinks to something about 6 miles across. So that leaves you a gap of about 4,000 miles from the center to the next layer up. With nothing to support it, that all falls inwards at a ludicrous speed. Seriously, it's been calculated to be something like a quarter of the speed of light. So in about a quarter of a second, those outer layers smash into that ball of neutronium down at the center of the star and bounce back outwards in a shock wave. That shock wave can take an hour or two to reach the outside of the star, but on the way out, it produces such incredibly high pressures that it forces that fusion reaction up through all of the heavier elements, all the way up through like uranium, plutonium, things like that. When that shock wave reaches the surface of the star, it explodes outwards at about 10% of the speed of light. So making the elements up to iron took millions or billions of years. Making the ones past iron happens in minutes to hours. This process has been repeated over and over and over again since the stars first formed, with star guts being blown across the universe, with each one of those explosions. And the shock waves from those explosions then meet up the dust of the other explosions and cause it to clump together, and the process starts all over again. Joni Mitchell was right when she said, "We are stardust, we are golden, we are billion-year-old carbon." Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen are the basic building blocks of life, and they all came from the stars. The iron in our blood came from dying stars. The iodine in our thyroids came from supernovas. The gold in your wedding band may have come from colliding neutron stars. The individual atoms of hydrogen in the water of our body may have been in existence since that time, 400 million years after the Big Bang. All that we are came from out there, and no matter what the color of your skin, the language you speak, or where you came from, everything, we're all made of the same stuff. Now, it gets even more interesting, because when I say we're all made of the same stuff, it's on many levels, right? We're all made of the same atoms, but when you put those atoms together into molecules, we do that the same way too. All life on Earth uses variations of those basic elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and a couple of other interesting elements to spice things up. And we all tend to use left-handed versions of those molecules. And on top of that, all life on Earth is coded in the same language. Every organism on Earth uses DNA. Is my battery dying? There we go, DNA. To store its data. And that data is formatted in basically the same way for every organism. Interestingly, what I said about left-handed, all DNA is right-handed. Don't know why. It's possible that you can make left-handed DNA, but nothing on Earth could do anything with it. So as long as your DNA is right-handed, every organism on Earth uses the same programming language. You can take the genes from a daffodil that give its flower that beautiful yellow color and put that into a rice and make a beautiful golden rice that's full of beta-carotene or vitamin A. Looks like that. Unfortunately, it's not available in the United States due to patent issues, but it's been done. It's called golden rice. You can also build a gene from scratch. For instance, human insulin, and insert it into yeast, and grow that yeast in vats, and harvest gallons of insulin from that. So our DNA is so similar that we are 99.9% identical to the person sitting next to us. Put it another way, all right? If I printed out all of the data in your genes, it would fill about 250,000 pages. 175 big books. Imagine just a line of encyclopedias. Of those 250,000 pages, only 500 of them would be unique to you. We're 98.4% identical to bonobos. We're 60% identical to bananas. So it turns out that the genes all program for amino acids to build proteins. You don't have to read this table, I just put it up there for completeness. But the code is the same again, no matter what the organism is. So the planet we live on and all that we can see or touch came from stardust. We all came from dust and are barely distinguishable from one another down to the molecular level. Every organism on this planet speaks the same programming language. So as Neil deGrasse Tyson said, we are all connected to each other biologically, to the earth chemically, and to the rest of the universe atomically. I can't think of a better explanation of the interdependent web of all creation, of all existence of which we are a part. Some of our atoms may have existed since the beginning of time and may continue to do so until the end of time. Part of us came from the fiery core of stars, some came from cataclysmic explosions. We are stardust, we are golden. In February of 2020, in recognition of the 30th anniversary of the pale blue dot photo, NASA reprocessed the original data using some modern technology, and this is the updated image. Still pretty hard to see that dot. So, let me leave you with a final thought. We are in the universe, and the universe is within us. Think about that for a second. You just helped the universe think about the universe. Once again, Carl Sagan said it best, we are a way for the cosmos to know itself. We have far more in common with one another than we have differences. Remember that as you leave today. And in your lives, remember Dr. Sagan's words. Try to deal more kindly with one another and preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. Thank you.
Let's have a moment of quiet to consider those thoughts.
Would you please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing Blue Boat Home in your teal hymnal number 1064.
Far away from the road.
releasing the chalice's flame today, I just wanted to give 3 quotes from Isaac Newton that seemed relevant. First, all my discoveries have been made in answer to prayer. Second, truth is ever to be found in the simplicity and not in the multiplicity and confusion of things. And the third quote, every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
I'm going to ask you all to rise and hold hands, or again, as Alex says, use the universal sign for I don't want to be touched. I really don't have much to say for the closure other than I got to say it again. Try to deal more kindly with one another and preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known. So mote it be. Amen.
Did you run the traps a second time?
I did not do it a second time.
Okay, Chris said there were droppings at the end. I'm thinking, what if you can run them again?